Welcome to the Retrieving Catholicity podcast, where we think about life and ministry in light of the whole truth with the whole church for the whole world. Welcome into another episode of Retrieving Catholicity. I am your host, Mason Ballard, and I'm glad you're here. But I must confess that we are going to talk about the most controversial topic today in evangelical life, short-term mission trips. They're not actually the most controversial, but if you've been online enough, and if you've been around evangelical culture enough over the last, 20 years, maybe 30, they are somewhat controversial, and there are lots of takes online about short-term mission trips. And I gotta confess, I am a millennial, as some of you know. That used to mean I'm a young guy. Now it means I'm middle-aged. So when you're a millennial, a cynical millennial, and you're young, you're cool. But when you're sort of a cynical millennial and you're middle-aged, you're just a grumpy old man. And so I don't want to be a grumpy old man. I want to be, I want to rejoice as the Bible commands us to rejoice. But I can't help occasionally being a little bit cynical about things. Maybe it's the Appalachian in me. Maybe it's my Reds fandom or my Mountaineers fandom or my Carolina Panthers fandom. Now that I think about it, there are many reasons for me to be cynical. But I can't help but be aware that mission trips can look like vacations. I can't help but be aware that mission trips can be paternalistic, right? We're going to go help those poor fill in the blanks. As a West Virginian, people come on mission trips to West Virginia. And I heard a pastor one time tell a story of a team. I don't remember who, where, what, when, why, so I don't have to even fake ignorance, right? They said, we're going to come help the poor people of West Virginia. And supposedly they had shirts that, I don't know if they were that direct, but they said something along the lines of helping the people of West Virginia, us poor people. And I say two things at once. I'm really glad you want to help people in West Virginia, a place I really love, but we don't need your help. There's this sense of who are you from a presumably wealthier town in the South to come up here and tell us, how to live or what to do. So I understand the problems. And so let's go ahead and maybe start with some of the reasons that short-term mission trips can get a bad rap, or some of the ways they can be unhelpful, because I want to land the plane with, I actually really value them and think they can be really helpful if done well. To put my cards on the table, I am pro short-term mission trips. I prefer a different nomenclature, but we'll talk about that later. But I am pro them, in fact, more now than I was. But I do want to do justice to some of the critiques and the criticisms, because I think that while they can be from overly cynical people at times, I do think there's a kernel of truth in some of the criticisms that we should be aware of. And if we're aware of those criticisms, then we should then be able to do it well. But you might have a question from the jump. What does this have to do with Catholicity? Well, as you know, some of our episodes aren't immediately impacted by Catholicity. They all revolve around the church, though, the church's life. But this one actually does have a pretty direct tie-in to the Catholicity of the church, because the church is Catholic, or because the church is whole, because the church is universal, we are connected to each other. And because we are connected to each other, your mission is related to my mission. That while we might have different ministries, different churches, different jobs, different goals, different callings, there is a sense in which there's one unfolding story that all those things share, right? That we're all thinking about our lives and our ministries and our callings and our missions in light of God's mission in the world. We might articulate God's mission in the world in different ways, but if we are an evangelical, at the heart of God's mission in the world is the redemption of souls, right? It's the Great Commission of disciples being made and multiplied all over creation. So there's a sense in which the Catholicity of the church motivates us towards this broader mission that the whole church shares, and it orients us towards one another because we share that mission. We're part of one church. We're part of one whole church which is taking the gospel to the nations. I actually don't think it's a stretch, even though Catholicity sounds like an academic topic and a short-term mission trip sounds like the height of a church's pragmatic ministries. Those two things are intimately connected, that we go because we are part of one church that is sharing one gospel all over the world. So Catholicity, I want to make clear from the beginning, is a motivating force for mission. In fact, in season 1, I think the best episode I did was one of the fewer watched ones, or listened to ones at least as well, called The Gospel Baton. I think I gave it more of a sermon-y name. I think I could maybe rebrand it and get more views. But go watch The Gospel Baton, because I connect, I think Catholicity connects history and mission. Because I think a Catholicity of time is our history, that we want to listen to the voices of the dead. We live in a democracy of the dead. We want to hear the voices who have gone before us, because those voices are connected to us. And then gospel mission takes those voices into the future, right? Gospel mission is taking the church where it's not yet been. It's naming Christ where he's not been named. It's going in the new territory. So I think the Catholicity of the church is a doctrine of the church which includes both the value of history and the necessity of mission. So it's called The Gospel Baton. Go back and watch that one, and go back and listen to that from season 1. But I wanted to bring that up here because I think that theologically we have reasons to be connected with each other. There are really good books out there about the dangers of short-term mission trips, like When Helping Hurts. I do confess it's been years since I've read it, and I don't know that I analyzed it, read it so much as I kind of read it syntopically, as they say, kind of looking over the table of contents and headings and reading through it. And I think that the arguments and the premise are valid therein. There is a kind of helping that is harmful, and we need to be aware of that in tangible ways. I don't want to focus so much on hey, I'm going to this place and building this building. I mean, the ways that can be unhelpful are, I think, spelled out in a book like that. I think there is a sort of spiritual paternalism that can be unhelpful. We're coming from the Western church, or we're coming from the American church, and we're more developed, or we're more sophisticated, and we're going to then export our way of being the church into other cultures in a way that does not do justice to the createdness of that culture, that just superimposes our own preferences onto a people, whereby the gospel should sort of organically help these people see what it looks like to live in light of the good news of Jesus in their time and space. So I think a more profound danger is a sense of spiritual paternalism, whereby we want everyone to do everything the way we do things, and then we judge their own health or validity based on that. And that we always maintain a relationship where it's me, you. I'm in charge. Here's what you want. And I heard a missionary talking about there's 2 types of mission teams they host on short-term trips: teams they love to see come, and teams they love to see leave. And I think the teams that they love to see leave, one of the reasons for that is they have this clear, we're here and you're here. Yeah, we know what you need. We know where you want to be. And this works itself out in a whole bunch of ways. One of the ways is surely you want a bigger building. Surely you want this. Surely you want that. Surely you need X or Y or Z. When in reality, maybe they don't need those things, I think a cross-culture worker, a full-time missionary, their job is to help contextualize in the best way possible. Contextualism isn't making the gospel palatable. Contextualism is learning how to live the particularities of life in light of the gospel. And it actually makes the gospel clearer, and in so doing, sometimes less palatable to people. But the point is, there are lots of people whose full-time task and their calling in life is to help make that happen. So they don't need us, who are not full-time at that, to tell them how to do it, right? The best trips we could lead are to just be servants to some broader strategy, and be faithful. And not to come in with we know what we're doing, you listen to us type of mindset. Sometimes it's not that blatant or egregious, but there can be a sort of paternalistic, we're going to go help the poor people of XYZ, spiritually speaking. We're going to go and show them how to do it. So short-term trips are bad when they are actually harming local people in a when helping hurts sort of way. short-term trips are unhelpful when they rise from a spirit of paternalism, or superiority might be a better word. I also think short-term trips are bad when they are seen as the pinnacle of our devotion. And we measure our faithfulness by how many trips we go on. The reality is some people love to travel and some people don't like to travel. And that is a factor on whether or not you go on a trip, frankly. There is no command in the Bible to go spend a week in another culture and learn and share there. There is a command to go into all the nations and make disciples. So how do you go into all the nations is the question. I don't want to get so particular to say, if you don't do this, you're in sin. I think that's a dangerous thing. But I do want to say, I think everyone should consider going on at least one of these trips and going as regularly as you can. We'll talk about why that is in a second. But I don't like when it's oh, look how spiritually mature they are. They went on a mission trip, or measuring our own health by our number of trips that we go on. Because frankly, it's just like church camp, this spiritual high, and I want to pursue that high, and I get that high, and got it, and I come back, and then I treat my coworker like dirt. What did you really learn? I mean, did you experience God's power, or did you just have an emotional impact on a trip? Or maybe you experienced God's power, but it's not translating into other aspects of your life. So I don't like when mission trips are held up as this pinnacle of devotion that we use as a rubric for our own spiritual health. They are costly. And so you do need to count the cost of what is the value of raising $2,000 to go and spend 8, 9, 10 days in a place versus taking that $2,000 and investing it in a church planting strategy, in long-term personnel, in on-the-ground indigenous efforts. There's two things I want to say about that. I applaud the strategic impulse, but I also want to confront and challenge the scarcity impulse. God's got enough money to do what he calls us to do. And I think that when we talk about money, we can hide cynicism with spiritual language, just like Judas. Why is that church so pretty? Why are they, why do they have that soundboard? Why they fill in the blank? And I can do it too. I'm not immune to it. I am a millennial and disgruntled sports fan. And so I get that. The problem is it's hard for me to judge your motives. Okay. Trust me, I'm got plenty of time with my own motives to wrestle with those. So I want to take two things at once, which I think a good theologian can do. I want to applaud the strategic effort and say maybe that is what you should do with that money. Yeah, maybe you should. But I also want to challenge the scarcity effort that sees giving to one thing as a taking from another thing, right? So I get it. There are multiple valid criticisms, and there are more that I'm sure a full-time Christian worker would share with us. Maybe if it's not a sensitive country, I could have one on the podcast to talk about this in more detail, and I'm sure we will do something like that at some point. But I want to transition to the reasons I still think they're helpful. Thing one is they are, I like to call a short-term mission trip like a living simulation, or like a simulation for reality, like a discipleship experience. So when people come back from a short-term mission trip, they always say, almost always say something like this. Oh man, I went there to help and to serve, but I found out that I was so impacted by the people there, or by the church there, or by the whatever there. And I want to say, that's the point. Like, what did you really think you could do in a week or 2 weeks that someone over there can't do? Yeah. And the answer is, we're all replaceable. What's the point in traveling across the world to hand someone a cup of coffee and just have a conversation about Jesus when a church member there, maybe who speaks that language, could do it? Well, there are multiple points. One point is to say, you get to do it. You get to go be a part of it. And you can learn, from a methodological standpoint, from what other people do. But more importantly, you see rhythms of gospel intentionality that you can then bring back into your life at home. There are things that happen on mission trips. You catch a glimpse of someone else's reality, and then you can let that challenge your reality. What is stopping you from doing certain outreach things that you might do on these trips? Okay, so there's simulations for reality, and that they give you exposure to a level of gospel intentionality that a missionary is going to live with, or whoever you're working with is going to live with, and then hopefully you bring that gospel intentionality back into your life. So I think there's a way of being impacted that's positive. Now, there's also like I'm so thankful for America, And again, I think there's like good and bad things about that. Like I love our country. I love our country more than I, maybe used to. With all of its faults, and boy, it's got a lot of faults. But I do think sometimes it can be a matter of perspective. If you come back and you're just like, I love America, the comforts of America. It's like, okay, did you, what exactly are you prioritizing and valuing here? So I don't think that's the best kind of come back and, oh my gosh, I'm more impacted than I was. Although I do think it's right to say, hey, I love that in America, I don't have to worry about this person I'm sharing with going to the cops and turning me in. I don't think that's weird. I think sometimes we can idolize our country, but there's a way of talking about love for country and patriotism that is not idolatry, and it's not even idolatry adjacent. It's just a good thing. So I do want to be careful not to sound too like, oh, well, you love America. I think it's fine to come home and be like, man, thank goodness I'm home. I can finally have Chick-fil-A and sweet tea, or I can finally sit in a house that's bigger. Whatever, that's fine. I do want to kind of impress upon you the importance of focus. What exactly am I taking away and what exactly am I applying? And I hope one thing you take away maybe is that you love America, but I hope there are much more theological and Christian takeaways for your discipleship journey. So all that to say, one reason that I think short-term trips are still good is that they are simulations for real life. That the efficacy of a trip is often seen in your transformation when you get back, and how do you approach your local church, and how are you going about ministry in your place. So that's reason one. Reason two is the value of friendship and the value of partnership. So if you kind of are aware of the pitfalls and you are doing what you can to mitigate those pitfalls, and if you come in with the mind of a servant and the heart of a servant, which is yours in Christ Jesus, who, though he was in the form of God, did not count equality with God a thing to be used for his own advantage, but emptied himself, taking the form of a servant, right? If we're going to take that approach and we go to another place, we go to another culture, we go there to say, that why are you here? I'm here because I love the Lord Jesus. I love you. I have friends who are here, and I want to help my friends do good work here. Okay. You begin to develop camaraderie with people, and you begin to develop friendships with people who live on the other side of the world. And those friendships can encourage you, and they can challenge you, and they can be an encouragement to them. We have partnered for many years in the Czech Republic and in Prague, and the work there is slower than it is in many other places. And I have loved over the years visiting the church gatherings. And, when Jakub's up there, he might know ministry is slow here, but there's this guy from West Virginia, another place where ministry is slow, who knows me, prays for me. We don't speak the same language. But we've prayed together, we've served together, and we've strived to see the gospel advance in that place. And so to him, it's me saying, hey, I see you. I love you. I want to be a part of what you're doing. I want to support you. I'm here, whatever you need. Not to just give you all my resources, but to say, hey, if I have resources, how can I share? If I have time, how can I share? If I have expertise, how can I share? Because what you're doing in this place where there's not a lot of Christians and you don't feel like a lot of Christians care about what you're doing, I want you to know I care about what you're doing and I love you. And he does that in reverse. And what you begin to find is friendship. Friendship is something you find on the way to something else. This is a theme, I think, in my ministry a little bit. If you're just looking for someone to be your friend because you want a friend, you're always going to be frustrated. But if you set your mind out and up and you're pursuing other things, you begin to find friends along the journey. You start running with people. You find friends in that community. You start playing tennis. You start going to the gym. You start hanging around these places. You start doing these things. Like, community follows some sort of substance or content. And I think that when you put gospel mission at the forefront, at the center, community begins to develop around that, okay? And you begin to realize that you have people you love and who love you, who don't speak the same language as you or aren't from the same culture as you, and you begin to develop real, lasting friendships that we believe will exist in eternity. So you are really being benefited and benefiting others just by being friends. So friendship, so simulation for reality, friendship and partnership, helping where we can help, being present, being friends is the second one. And on that too, the people you go on the trip with, this is the only time in your life you're going to be going, most likely, outside the country with this group of people. It's always a random, to us, group of people that have responded to some call from the church to say, we're going here and doing this. Who wants to go? You decide you're going to go. God has ordained who's going, by the way. And then you're on a plane with these people. You're walking miles with these people. You're staying in Airbnbs with these people. Like, you are in spaces with them that you are never with in other times. And that isn't like an obstacle. Like, that's part of the beauty of it. So you begin to meet people and grow in love for church members in that way. So friendships are not an insignificant part of it. Third is going to be perspective. We should be challenged and encouraged in the same way that we challenge and encourage, okay? We see that the gospel is bigger than our local church. The gospel is bigger than our denomination. The gospel is bigger than our country. And the gospel is bigger than our culture. That the good news of Jesus will go to every tribe and tongue, period. And that this good news of Jesus will go into the soil of that culture, and from that soil, the word will create a people we call the church. And we can learn more about the nature of the church and the nature of our God as we experience him in other places with other people at other times. We need that. We need that. The same reason we should read history is the same reason we should experience other cultures. And that's to help from our own mind and our own surroundings being the most important things about us. That our view of God deepens as we behold him with the saints, as we behold him with the whole church. So it's for our own edification, our own growth, our own, sanctification, our own being challenged, that we go and do these things. Related to our challenge, another reason is that short-term mission trips can help us see God's working in normal ways. I think that it's a temptation for us to over-spiritualize everything, but I think it's a temptation for us to under-spiritualize everything. That when you say, I have to raise $2,000, how am I going to do it? And you start praying and asking and sharing, you're taking a step outside your comfort zone, you're seeing God provide. No, I'm seeing people give. No, you're seeing God provide through people giving. That you are saying, I'm going to take a step of obedience and a step of faith, and I'm going to see what happens. And then you see what God brings, and then you see the experience that you have, and then you ask, how has God been leading me in this? And then, here's the thing, there's nothing uniquely special about that trip. You can begin to see all of your life that way. It is a simulation for reality. It is saying, I'm going to try to grow my faith through the preparation of and execution of and reflection upon this trip. And I think that is of significant value. And I mentioned too that I don't love the name mission trip. And I still use it just because I've learned you can either try to change everything or you can just do good work. And sometimes you need to just do good work. But I'll often use the language of partner trips because it's helping us partner with our partners and do gospel work. Our mission is to partner with them. So that's why we can call it mission trips. But, what is the mission? Well, the mission is the mission of God in the whole world, that we can't go complete in a week, but we can go partner with the people who are doing it. And I like to emphasize the fact that we're like connecting with our partners and doing whatever they say in humility, whatever they say. And the last reason, I had forgotten this one. That's why I was going to a close, but now I remember. The last reason is I don't know any cross-cultural workers or full-time missionaries, to use that word, who have not been on a short-term trip. I'm sure they exist, and I'm sure they're out there. And then maybe I've got some examples, but off the top of my head, I can't think of any. Almost always, God calls people to the nations through some experience with the nations. In high school, I went here. In middle school, I went here. My church went there. I volunteered to go. And then on that trip, God gives you a vision for his working in the world, and then you go. So I think as a pipeline for workers to go to name Jesus where he's not been named, to leave gospel-saturated places to go to gospel-dry places, I think short-term trips are an invaluable tool. So I have wanted in this episode to acknowledge some of the reasons, there are more, some of the reasons that I think have some merit why mission trips, short-term mission trips can be unhelpful. But motivated by the doctrine of Catholicity and in light of the Catholicity of the church, I've wanted to say, while they can be unhelpful, if done properly, they have immense value. And I hope in the second half of this pod, you have seen the immense value that comes with being a part of and going on a short-term trip. I hope you'll consider going on one. Our church has one coming up. I'm not sure when this will drop, so I won't give all the details, but if you see this in the fall of 25, we have one in the winter of 26 that you may be able to go on, maybe full by then, I don't know, but we'll have more in 26, we'll have more in 27. And if you're a pastor or church leader, I would encourage you to cultivate long-term partnerships with people who you can hang out with, people who you like. Because if you don't like them, if you can't hang out with them, you're going to be miserable trying to plan a trip and then spend a lot of time with them. Like, it's going to be bad for everybody. So find people who you vibe with, who you connect with, who are doing the sort of work you believe in, and find out how you can help. And find out if there's a way for people from your church to come and be a part of that. And I think the people who go will be blessed, and I think your church will be blessed in doing so. I end with an anecdote. We've not had a trip in a while because a lot of reasons, not lack of desire or lack of good partners, but there have been a lot of reasons that it would have been difficult. And so I have sensed what's lacking when they're not there. Because when you're inviting people to the trip, you're also saying, go where you are and share it. Like there's an external emphasis that comes with those trips, even in the promotion of them that is lacking when they're not there. And I've sensed that. I've felt that in our church. And so I am excited to be promoting one and then putting them back on the radar and then talking more about what is God calling you to do in the world? Where is he sending you? Where are you called to stay and to root your life for the glory of the Lord as part of this one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church? Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for thinking in light of the Catholicity of the church about missions, or to put it more simply, why the whole church matters and why the mission of God matters for local churches who care about this one mission that he has in the world. Thanks for joining us. Like, subscribe, rate, review, tell a friend, etc., etc., etc. See you next time.